Jonathan, my producer's just telling me in my ear that you've been given the jab. If so, which vaccine did you get?
So last Friday I got my first dose and it was the AstraZeneca vaccine. And I can tell you also that in the past I have actually had a blood clot. But am I worried? No.
Right, so you're not feeling concerned at all about that in light of the rollout being paused overseas of that very vaccine?
Look, it's really interesting, and obviously we need to take these reports seriously, but we also need to be aware that over 300 and something million people have received COVID vaccines. More than 13 million people have received the AstraZeneca vaccine around the world. With that sort of number of people receiving a vaccine, there are going to be things happening that happen to coincide with receiving the vaccine that would have happened anyway. That is going to happen. This was inevitable that something like this would occur. What's really critical is that we understand whether or not the actual vaccine is causative. And the data we've got today, the data that I've seen, don't suggest that that conclusion can be reached. And so what's really important is we don't jump to conclusions. Now, I can understand countries are wanting to be incredibly careful about this sort of thing. But when it comes to making sure that people have confidence, we need to make decisions based on the best evidence. And that means we need to assess each of these cases that's occurred. So look at the background rates. And I can tell you, I've done a little bit of back of the envelope calculations. And I come to the same conclusion that, of course, the regulators have come to here in Australia, in Europe, in the United States. And that is there is currently no evidence that the rate of blood clots after the AstraZeneca vaccine is any different to what would have happened anyway.
How can health authorities in different parts of the world, though, come to such different conclusions? I mean, that really does undermine confidence in the whole rollout.
Yeah, and I guess I'm concerned by this too, and I'm concerned, to be honest, by politicians who make very quick comments here in Australia without actually understanding the evidence, because we know that we need to maintain confidence in the vaccine. Now, of course, that means we need to have the confidence that we are tracking whether or not there are side effects of this vaccine, and Australians need to know that we have the best system in the world for tracking this. There is no signal that has come up yet in Australia, as in no signal that there is an association of blood clots with the AstraZeneca vaccine or any of the vaccines. There's no signal in the United Kingdom. And indeed, the data from the countries that have chosen to put a pause on the vaccine don't suggest that there's a causative link, that don't suggest that there's an increased incidence. Of course, it's early days. Of course, we need to continue to monitor this. And if something does come up, then we will need to act at that point. But the danger, especially in Europe, where the vaccine is out of control, where there are people who are dying from this disease, is that it undermines confidence when in fact the benefits of the vaccine are likely to outweigh any risks. So what Australia is doing, I think, is the right decision, which is to say, right now the data don't suggest there's an association. We've been alerted to a possible concern. Let's watch, let's continue to bring the data in from Australia and from other countries. If at some point it looks like there's a signal, then we should do something about it. But I can tell you there are other vaccines where jumping early to a conclusion about a side effect has undermined the entire vaccine. And so I would encourage all of those in the European countries that are making these decisions to really think carefully about what the implications of those decisions might be.
You alluded there to politicians here in Australia jumping on this bandwagon. Clive Palmer, Matt Canavan, Craig Kelly, they're all joining together today to say that this needs to be suspended. It must be incredibly frustrating for people in your field, experts in this field, to see politicians who have a loud voice, who have access to microphones coming out with their own information that is at odds with the information we're getting from our health authorities.
Yeah, if they had some great science and data to base those comments on, it would be wonderful to hear that. But I know they don't. I know that they are seeing the same things that I'm seeing. And to have a politician who really isn't listening to the science make a comment around vaccine policy, I think is just, it's appalling, and we need to make sure that that sort of thing doesn't happen, that those people aren't listened to. The government has done a great job in controlling this pandemic because it's listened to the science. That's what the government is doing. And I think individual politicians should really, frankly, keep their mouths shut about this sort of thing if and until they've got some sort of better evidence than I've seen.
Jonathan Carapetis, appreciate your insights. Thank you for that.